Why would I do a CD called Confessions of a Muslim Comedian? And that was the idea of bringing entertainment to Muslims, for Muslims, about Muslims, but for everybody. I got Dean in my life. Who is Dean? What you bring me around here? You know how Muslims get you all hyped up? And like, he said, brother, you ready to be Muslim? I said, yeah. He said, you know what that means? I said, tell me, brother. He said, you ready to give up the swine? I said, yes, sir. I'm giving up the swine. He said, are you ready to give up the alcohol? I said, yes, sir. I'm ready to give up the alcohol. He said, you ready to give up the women? I said, yes, sir. I'm ready to give up the alcohol. Hey everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes, and we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Mars, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you're having an amazing Wednesday. Wednesday is always special for me. Wednesday's like hump day. It's sort of like, what did you do for Monday and Tuesday? And what are you going to do for Thursday, Friday? Saturday and Sunday are sort of like the recharge days, so I don't worry about those days. So, first of all, I want to welcome you to the show. Putting eyes on the Shout Out Show, brothers and sisters, is it's a mercy, it's a barakah from Allah. And a lot of times, it gives us a platform. We can talk about a lot of things that A, you're not going to hear from on regular shows. B, you're definitely not going to hear on TVs. C, you're not going to hear them from the people who don't like you. And sometimes D, you're not going to hear these stories from the people who look like you, sound like you, pray like you, and so on. So I thought today would be a really good day, a hump day, because tomorrow will be Throwback Thursdays. And of course, we're going to be bringing back another rendition of Friday Funnies, Saturday Spotlight. We're working on our guests. We may have one, we may not. And I just feel like, the platform in and of itself needs to be flexible, breathable, so that when you come, I surprise you with ideas. And inshallah, I hope that you are inspired and you bring me some ideas. You put things in the chat box, or you send things in email or text, wherever you want to reach me, or email with permissiblelaughter@gmail.com. You can hit that up whenever you're ready. The point of the matter is, to keep fresh content going, this is what we have to do. Now, shout out real quick, brothers and sisters. Apologize for the lighting. The light switch broke in Mom's spot. It wore out after, 45 years. So I'm going to have to get another light switch. Allah knows best. And make the wire for the light switch. However, my mom has 152 lamps. So if you need a lamp, or you are a plane in search of a place to land, this is the place for you. So, housekeeping. If you're coming to the show for the first time, thank you for coming to the show. You are an official participant of the Shout Out Show. I'm Preacher Moss. I'm going to be introducing some of the stars in the building in the chat room in just a moment. I tell you, first of all, if you come to the show for the first time, hit the subscribe button. We got to get our subscribe numbers up. We're at 127, been there for about a week, trying to get to 128. You know how I am, brothers and sisters. It's number one. And number two is, when you come here, I want you to understand this is a part of a very, very open platform, a very, very freewheeling platform. We talk about a lot of things. I don't censor myself and I don't censor my guests. Only time I do take umbrage is when people are disrespectful to one another. We don't do that. That has nothing to do with being Muslim or Christian or anything. That has to do with just basic respect in a platform. That's number one. And also, if you're coming to the show for the first time, get your shout out in. Get your feet wet. Stop playing around. You got something to say. I'm telling you, say it. Say it in the chat box. We keep this thing rolling. Like I said, we have a lot of things. Today's topic, I don't know if it's a popular topic. I don't know if it's a topic that's not discussed enough. Before I get into it, let me get some stars in the building. Sister Reed, thank you for coming on the show. I hope that Auntie is doing better. Please tell her, all of us, we love her and we hope her to recover soon. And we wish her shifa. Shifa means a full recovery with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sister Ika, all the way from Indonesia. She just got a new job. She's going to be a cook at her nephew's catering business. Big up to you, Sister Ika. Sister Naima, all the way from D-Town, Detroit. You had a little excitement up there, huh, Sister Griffin? A little excitement. People, the warlords were at the gates trying to uncertify a perfectly legal election. I was wondering what was going to go on in Wayne County. It was interesting. Brother Altaf Rashid comes to us always, all the way, not always, but all the way by way of Toronto. So Altaf, this might be a great conversation for you as well. Many of you know me from doing stand-up. You said Preacher Mars does stand-up comedy and things like that. Yeah, some people know me from teaching. My background as a comedian was I did social commentary. A lot of people don't know that. Long before there was Allah Made Me Funny, which didn't happen until 2003. There was a Preacher Mars in 1991, 1992, who would go on stage with his kufi and talk about Muslim values, as well as trying to live those Muslim values the best I could in these clubs, in these venues, alcohol, you name it, drugs, trying to hold that situation together. And even when I went to Hollywood, I was known as the Muslim guy, that Muslim dude. And it was meaningful because my name was Preacher. It wasn't a big, long Muslim name, was Preacher. So people would be shocked that I was a Muslim. The idea of Allah Made Me Funny, and I was watching Dr. Bilal Butch Ware. If you get a chance, check his stuff out. But he reminded me, or better yet, he didn't remind me, he encapsulated a lot of things for me. Stars in the building alert. Sister Sultana, consultant producer. You're late, Sister Sultana. I looked at the clock. I'm just kidding. My little brother, JT. JT is important, and he's going to be an important part of this conversation because he was there at the beginning of Allah Made Me Funny. So he can identify with a lot of things that I'm about to talk about today. And I think it's important because we've moved away from that. And that this thing has become, Muslim comedy or Muslim identity has become a bit about a novelty right now. Trying to show a particular type of people that you have merit or that you have value or that you fit in or that you're American as anybody else is garbage. It's garbage. When you have to literally stand up and jump up and down in front of people who don't like you to say that, listen, I'm likable. I'm American like you. You have lost the battle. Listen to me. You have lost the battle. I was not raised that way. I was not raised that way as African-American male, or African-American Muslim. I was not raised that way. And what's interesting is that there has been a shift, a very fundamental shift. So I'm going to take a deep breath because I really want to delve into the topic of the day. And this one, I'm going to take some time with. This is Trump and the secret war against Black Muslims. That's Trump and the secret war against Black Muslims. Let's give Trump some credit. He didn't start it, but he found a lifeline to this war. And he took it and he plugged it into the right people who would make the arguments, who would enforce the law, who would back him on some things that are prejudicial as well as really unconstitutional. And he would get away with it. But his push, if you will, for things like a Muslim ban, things like being involved in Syria, things like being involved in the Middle East and Afghanistan, was to shift, if you will, the attention away from the importance, the vibrancy, and the threat of African American Muslims here in the United States. Here in the United States. There's two narratives that Trump deals with. Trump deals with a narrative that is not just African American or Black Muslims, but Black people who are spiritually guided. Let me say it again. Black people who are spiritually guided. And that's one category, but the other category is Black people who are spiritually guided and still connected to the communities and the youth in their communities. If you want to hear the story, I'm going to say it once. Please pay attention, because it's not a difficult story. It's a hurtful story. It's a story about ambition. It's a story about inspiration, but it's also a story about failure. It's also a story about people in our own community, particularly Muslim community, letting us down. We don't fight. See, the thing about African American Muslims, we have a tradition in the United States, along with African American narrative, particularly in religion practice, particularly in religious impetus and imperative, is that we fight. We fight. So the difference between African American Muslims in terms of perception and my immigrant brothers and sisters here in the United States is we will fight with literally nothing. And because we'll fight with literally nothing, it's hard to threaten us with anything. Our immigrant brothers and sisters, whom I love, but they've been through a certain type of indoctrination here in the United States, and it's proved detrimental and lethal in some regards. Not only lethal, not particularly lethal for African Americans, but lethal for other immigrant Muslims who wanted to come here and Muslims abroad. You see, we don't set the tone for Muslims abroad. Here in the United States, believe it or not, American Muslims are in a particular echelon, on a particular pedestal, and the world looks at how the United States, the leader of the free world, treats its Muslims. And from that, it develops a picture about how they treat their Muslims. Look at France. France has pretty much put a ban on women's head covering, the burqa, the hijab. We talk about Chinese Muslims in China being reoriented, being almost like a Spike Lee's movie, Drop Squad, where they're forced to eat pork, where they're forced to renounce their religion. We have these things that are going on around the world. In Russia, we don't even know what they're doing to Chechen and Russians, and we won't know because we're stuck here. But here is something that I want to make sure that we do not lose sight of. That the African American Muslim community, for better or for worse, believed in something. People ask me about Allah Made Me Funny. Why isn't it not around now? And I'm going to be dead honest with you. Allah Made Me Funny is not around because it did not have the people to represent the vision. I had 3 people with me: Azim, Muhammad, who's from the Nation of Islam, Azur Zaman, and Muhammad Amr. They did not represent, in any regards, they didn't respect. Well, Azim did, but they didn't represent, they didn't respect, they didn't honor the vision of Imam Warfdi Muhammad. They did not. It's safe to say that they played on his vision because it got them things. It got them into spaces they may have normally not even gotten into. Spaces, trusted spaces with African American Muslims, African American Muslims entertainers, African American Muslim journalists, and it gave them a pass, if you will, a pass to go to places they had never been before. More importantly, they had never thought about going to before. Now, for myself, I went to the immigrant Muslim community long before, of course, Allah Made Me Funny. I was familiar. I had to because I traveled all over. But what has happened in the last, I want to say, 8 years, maybe even longer, is that something has come, as Malcolm said, the chickens have come home to roost. And the chickens have come home to roost because A, we did not protect the black narrative for African American Muslims and black religion, period. It's become a mockery, it's become a bit of a sideshow whereby we can't get to religious doctrine, we can't get to aspects of traditional learning about religion, God consciousness, if you will, God fearness, if you will, reliance upon God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't do that because we're too busy chasing chicken scratch. We're chasing the wrong thing. Let me continue. My brother JT is on here, and he will remember this. That when Allah Made Me Funny started, you can't find it on the old Allah Made Me Funny website anymore because it was taken down. But there was a decision that was made. Donald Trump and his people realized, which was really one of my worst fears. He realized that African American Muslims, the small population that we are here in the United States, from my immigrant brothers and sisters, from their view, and a realistic view in a lot of cases, don't have our backs. They don't have our backs. It was a lack of support of a strong narrative in favor of creating this new narrative, which denied this thing over here. And I'm going to say something, I don't think I've said this, but it needs to be said. Allah Made Me Funny was established, practiced, and promoted in the tradition of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. It was established, practiced, you understand? Executed in the best of tradition. Absence of fiqh, jurisprudence, absence of all these things, but this unifying idea of what? Goodness, justice. And the reason why, when you turn on television these days, and I'm going to come back to my point about Trump and the secret war against black Muslims. We got another person in. I'm not going to cut it, Fareed. You know it's not going to happen. In the tradition of African American Islam, which is inclusive of NOI, W.D. Muhammad, even Ahmadiyas, it established the idea based on the principle that true service is that you fundamentally, hear what I'm saying, you fight against fundamental injustice. You fight against fundamental injustice, which means that if you're African American or Latino, but let's just stick with African American right now, you come out of the womb having to fight against fundamental injustice. That was our preoccupation. That was the thing, ladies and gentlemen, that established our existence, that established our communities. We were built upon fighting against fundamental injustice. The religion was not a reach for any of us. In the NOI, in the W.D. Muhammad community, even the Ahmadiyas, it was not a reach, brothers and sisters, talking about fighting fundamental injustice, because if you didn't fight it, you'd be crushed. King fought against fundamental injustice as a Christian. If he didn't, they would have been crushed. Medgar Evers, crushed. All of them would have been crushed if you didn't have this idea of Islam and of Islam that evolved, which is W.D. Muhammad community, that evolved, brothers and sisters. I'm never going to tell you that the NOI is this or that and that, because if you don't have that, you don't have that DNA, you can't talk about what I'm talking about right now. And when 9/11 happened, hear what I'm saying. When 9/11 happened, there was a fundamental choice that had to be made in the African American Muslim community. A fundamental choice was made in the African American Muslim community, which was this: we were fighting racism, the fundamental injustice of racism. We now had to look at Islamophobia. And Islamophobia, don't take this wrong. Take it for what it is, Brother Fareed. Islamophobia was not our fight. We had a fight. We dealing with racism our whole lives. Islamophobia was a new thing. It's not even 20 years old. How old is slavery? But the pivot, even for a small tour of Muslim comedians, was that we are formed and developed to fight, brothers and sisters, the fundamental injustice of Islamophobia. The problem is my brothers on the tour didn't understand that you still have to fight the fundamental injustice of racism. And in the United States, there's an interesting thing that happens. Thank you, brother. You were there. I remember. That was a great DVD, man. But it served and still continues to serve to separate our communities. We're not working on the same thing because African Americans have linked themselves to this fight against Islamophobia, which is inclusive of anti-Muslim rhetoric, which is inclusive of anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic rhetoric. We fight that. But what happened was that was all that was on the table. The time to turn back to the idea of fighting racism, not just for African American Muslims, but for African American people, has been missing. Has been missing. Not until what? George Floyd, which was last summer, did we have this wellspring. But it wasn't a wellspring. The question in the African American community is, and I'm going to put it out there, where was the outcry, not for Ahmaud Arbery, valid, not for George Floyd, valid, not for Breonna Taylor, but for the 200, 300, 400 years of oppression and that long-standing aspect of fundamental injustice? Why is it this part of our religion, this community of our religion, didn't attack that? My immigrant brothers and sisters, not all of you, but enough for this to be an issue. Why didn't you attack that when you first got here? You're going to schools and colleges and universities clearly knowing that not even 15 minutes before you got there, they had to call out the National Guard for a black person to go, to integrate the school. And it hurts. Our pioneers, God bless them, have led us to be to a point where we don't bring these things up, because in some situation, scenario, it's like we're not being good to one another. But if we lie and we don't say the truth and we don't speak what's on our heart, then you're being disingenuous. And I'll put that out to anybody in the Muslim community, African American Muslim community. I'm not saying anything different. As 9/11 came along, it was attractive to white America, to white Hollywood, to not deal with people who are Muslims that look like me and look like you. Why? Why was it not attractive? Because in our DNA, we were still dealing with the aspect that we understood, recognized, and fought against fundamental injustice. So where do we go from here? Donald Trump and his secret war against Muslims, you should have been knowing this, not secret war against Muslims, but black Muslims. You see, the attack that he gives to my immigrant brothers and sisters, those who immigrated here, those who want to be here, it was a distraction. It was to make sure that the spotlight, the attention, the resources, and the rhetoric was spent on that population. That population, which in their eyes, and practicality, and for all practical reasons, in their eyes and their understanding, was not going to fight the fight of fundamental injustice for those people, African American Muslims and African people. I've said this before. You know, if Lil Wayne, here's the dangers of a Lil Wayne or 50 Cent. If they didn't have a practical relationship, hear what I'm saying, a practical relationship in the rap world for Islam and Muslims. If they didn't have that, if African American Muslims did not engage in the fight against injustice for Islamophobia, in many regards, foregoing the fight against racism, to work to the best of our abilities to protect our brothers and sisters from immigrant countries, to protect and argue and fend for them. If that wasn't there, you'd be sitting ducks. America would swallow you up. And America doesn't swallow up my immigrant brothers and sisters because they have to look at us. And we won't let it happen. Despite the fact many feel like haven't had our backs. We won't let it happen. You know why? Because it's still working in the best tradition of prophetic understanding and prophetic, I want to say, evolution, if you will. So the people that I'm talking about, they'll never wind up at Al-Azhar. The people that I'm talking about, they won't get their ijazah. The people that I'm talking about, they may not even heard the word Sharia and investigated it with real meaning and integrity. But they know that Quran. They know that example of Prophet Muhammad from afar and the man working Muhammad from up close. And you mean to tell me that this man in 70 years can pull and garner that kind of devotion and loyalty, not just for his people, but for our other brothers and sisters, our immigrant brothers and sisters. And we're stuck here today. We are stuck here today. Trump and the secret war on black Muslims is the fact that they clearly know. One of the wars they've won is that they've driven a stake between the African American Muslim and the immigrant Muslim. That we won't talk, that we won't express ourselves, that if the president talks to the leader of India, that's not our leader. If the president talks to the leader of Pakistan, that's not our leader. He understands that I can manipulate the roots of people who come here as opposed to the people who were brought here in chains, who were brought here in bondage, forced to forego all of their culture, all of their religion, their God, their science, brothers and sisters, spirituality, all of it taken away. And we have to sit here, as we've done for since the 1920s, 1930s, and grit our teeth and take it. And because of, again, prophetic tradition, we'll continue to do it. Not because we have to, because that's what the book says. That's what the Quran says. That's what Hadith says. That's what Son of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, says. Because we are oriented that way. If you took the Nation of Islam and switched out their Aqidah, and you kept all the discipline in the Nation of Islam, you'd have a freaking army. You have an army that could change the face of Islam here in the United States and all over the world. You say, why hasn't it happened? Why hasn't it happened? Well, What's good for the immigrant brothers and sisters and African American Muslims is good for the WD Muhammad community and the NOI. Though that's beginning to change. It's beginning to change because the youth, if you will, are doing their homework and due diligence, realizing this is who we are. This is who we are, but this is where we should be. And that's all of us. So you never hear me say anything disparaging about the nation because there's nothing to that. I love those brothers. They love me. We understand that there's work to do. And it is the love of Black people that holds us together. The love of Black people. I've always said this. And if you ever get a chance to pick it up, pick up Busta Rhymes' album, Extinction Level Event 2. He has a tune on there called Mustafa Muhammad with Rick Ross. Now, I'm saying this, and I ain't no hip-hop head. I'm an old hip-hop head. I stopped with Rakim's last album. But let me say, it's crafted in a way that it gives you a veritable history of Islam in America for African Americans. The evolution of the NOI, 5% Nation, and the W. Muhammad community is an amalgamation in that album. It's actually amazing album. But here's the thing about that album. The thing is, speaking about gods and earth, which is, a connection to Islam, there's a general love there. There's a general sense of pride and appreciation and history. History and love and appreciation that has not been tainted by Islam as we know it in the United States today. And you have to take a look at that. Sure, there's some things to be corrected, and just like everybody's faith and belief, there's something to be corrected, but there's something there that is pure. And we have to get back to that. And let me shake this out a little bit more before I get off here. The secret war against Black Muslims was never really, and I put this as the Trump and the secret war against Black Muslims. But notice, I didn't say that Trump waged this war against Black Muslims. He recognized that there was a problem and he exacerbated it. He exploited it. And to his credit, he's largely successful. Because when we did Allah Made Me Funny back in the day, it was, brothers and sisters, a situation where we can allow Muslims to come out in the mainstream and not wait to be validated. Validate yourself. For us, by us. The same way Elijah Muhammad said, do for self. For us, by us. But we also said this was a tour to highlight the importance and contributions of African American Muslims in the United States landscape. That always gets lost. And in between the laughs and stuff like that, what happens is, once you move past the laughs, what happens is people start to forget. Well, they start to forget that the original intention, when I met Azim Muhammad in Madison, Wisconsin, and we were working together, and I first told him about Allah Made Me Funny. A funny story, we found out we were both Muslim because we'd been there the whole week, and neither one of us drank. We would drink these cider drinks. And he was like, you drink a lot of cider. I was like, yeah, you drink a lot of cider too, brother. He said, what's up? You like cider? I said, no, I'm Muslim. He goes, me too. I said, Azim. He told me his last name was Muhammad. So I digress. But even Azim, at that point in time, much to his credit, and he doesn't get enough credit in the whole pantheon of Muslim comedians. So I'm going to shout my brother out. He's the finest foot soldier you can ever have, that you can take in a battle when you are comedians trying to advocate for the ideology of Islam, ideology of fairness for your people, African American and people of colors, people who are oppressed. But more importantly, a guy who got it early on that this was a push in a prophetic model that fit in, of course, what Imam W.D. Muhammad was saying, the aspect of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the aspect of the nation, because we were still fighting injustice, fundamental injustice. and that connected us at the hip. So I'm gonna make a pledge here. Not a pledge. I'm gonna make a notation here. There are a lot of, not a lot, maybe like 4 or 5 African American Muslims that I want you to support. Not African American Muslims, I'm sorry. African American Muslim comedians I want you to support. I want you to support all African American Muslims, Latino Muslims, support all Muslims. But I want you to take notice of the comedians that you don't hear from. I was on a show with Hassan Minhaj. He's doing well. Muammar has his show. I think I saw his mine is right on Muammar's show. They're all kicking it with Dave Chappelle. But nobody checks on African American Muslim comedians who did the work, who put in the hard hours, who made the sacrifices. Those sacrifices were for much more than stage time. Those sacrifices were for fighting fundamental injustice. And the thing about Hollywood, just like a political system, i.e., Trump, is you use power, you use opportunity. If you're not correct in your mind, if you're oppressive, you use that to forge different type of opportunities and to eliminate opposition. To eliminate opposition. So many of you never heard of Moses Muhammad. Some of you heard of Omar Regan. There's another brother out of Philly. You've heard of me, alhamdulillah. The game has been good to me. But just like I'm talking about African American Muslim comedians, there's a much larger space of African American Muslims that we're not celebrating. I was happy to have Sister Aisha Mustafa on the show. She's been running the Muslim Journal for years, but the Muslim Journal is it's on life support. They're having a hard time raising $30,000 for that. An institution. If it were to go away, nobody would know. But if one of these masjids in a nice, wealthy neighborhood were to remotely miss 2 or 3 mortgage jumps, there would be a mass outpouring of, oh my goodness, the masjid has to stay. Well, you know what? Our institutions of African American, Black Muslim life and existence expression need to be upheld. They need to be spoken in high terms with a lot of respect and in some regards reverence, because those are the things. And I'm not talking about my time, brothers and sisters. I'm not talking about my time. I'm talking about 20, 30 years before me. The people who had the vision. Some of the people who are ridiculed now, oh, this, da, da, da. Yeah, you can't do that. So I'm going to close on that. But I'm going to ask everybody, start having that conversation about African American Muslims following prophetic tradition and lending themselves to fights about, again, fighting fundamental injustice. That's what we do. That's what we've been doing. And for whatever reason, we're castigated for it. We're looked down upon it for it. We're feared for it. We're disrespected for it. That can't happen. I'm putting up the Muslim Journal. Go to muslimjournal.net and please, whatever you can do for that institution. Because see, that institution is not the Muslim Journal. That used to be Muhammad Speaks. And Muhammad Speaks was not getting to Muslim people. Even now, the final call, they go into the neighborhood and they give that to non-Muslims. And I'm going to say Muslim Journal, we need to go in and start giving that paper to non-Muslims because we got to get back on our dawah game. But that's an aside. I'm going to ask folks to start having these conversations because now you're looking at breakouts of injustice all over the place. All over the place. I talked about, take care, Miss Eleanor.
All right.
I talked about
Thank you.
Michigan, where certain powers that be tried to not certify the votes in Michigan. And only because of outcry did they finally, but it was the thought that people thought they could do it. And that seems to be the tone now. They feel like there's no one to give them resistance. And black folks and black Muslims, we give resistance, but how long are you going to do it? There's a poll that said 30% of Muslims voted for Donald Trump. And I'm saying, hey, you're going to vote for who you want to vote for. But I want you to tell me why. I want you to explain to me what was so attractive that you would vote against your own interests. Even that, brothers and sisters, not to be funny or not to be mean-spirited, but I'm like, but where are we? In this period, we have all these periods in classic Islam. We have the Abbasid period, and we have this period and that period. If this were a period for Islam in the United States, this is the moist period. This is the phenomena of predictably some of the moistest Muslims we've ever had. And we have to get past that. And we have to move past that because, brothers and sisters, we can't survive. Am I saying anything new? I'm not saying anything new. I'm saying that I'm watching a man, politicians run amok of not democracy, not the Constitution, but of God's law. God's law doesn't even matter to these people. And you mean we're not shouting it from the mountaintops? Yeah, Biden won by 5 million votes. But Trump got what, 72, 73 million people who believe that he is right. Not even that he's right. They believe that he is the will of the people and the will of the people is him. Ain't no black Muslim standing up right now. Put in that time, and the long game is we die off. I got a head full of gray hair, brothers and sisters. I like my dad said, I got more past behind me than future in front of me. But the serious thing is, you can't overlook it. We can't be weak in that space. And the reason we can't be weak is because it's supposed to be a partnership. If you show weakness in one quadrant, you're going to be weak in the other part. And the relationship between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims is weak. It's never been weaker. And we have to stand up, and you have to find, all of us got to find some kind of new DNA to establish some new type of chromosomes to birth a new type of relationship in between us. Otherwise, the next time, like Baldwin says, the fire next time. Well, the fire next time for Muslims is you ain't going to have to worry about a Muslim ban for the people trying to get into the country. You're going to have to worry about a Muslim ban for the people that are stuck in the country. The Muslims who are here. The Muslims who will lose their rights. It's a fine line, brothers and sisters. It's my time for tonight. If I said anything that you appreciate it, that's all due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I said anything that irritated you and made you uncomfortable, good. That means I did my damn job. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shout Out Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shout Out Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarif Altar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out TarifAltar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.